When you think about, we hear also the word fairness a lot. What does that actually mean, really, in the world of AI? And then how do you operationalize that?
So this is the part where I feel like scale is a massive challenge.
Stand by.
If you spend 5 minutes online, you'll quickly see that everyone has an opinion about artificial intelligence. And some people feel like this technology is being built by technologists for technologists. And then the rest of us, the doctors and teachers and artists and everyday users from Nairobi to New York, are just trying to play catch up. And then there's the real concern that this technology is only going to represent the loudest voices online and not everybody else. So I'm here at Microsoft campus to talk to Hewitt Tesfaye, a technical advisor in the Office of Responsible AI. And she's working on making AI systems more inclusive, more transparent, and more globally representative. So wonderful to be sitting down with you. I've been looking forward to this interview. I have so many questions. And my first is AI, it's a general purpose technology. So we're going to rebuild our society on top of this technology. So who needs to be at these decision-making tables, in your opinion?
As many opinions and perspectives as we can incorporate as early as possible in the design of an AI system and the training of an AI model, the more voices we can incorporate, the better, obviously. So we need to step beyond just our AI engineers and technologists and think about other disciplines, first and foremost, the linguist, the sociologist, the anthropologist, but also the average person.
And you have a really fascinating background. So I want to understand how that is shaping the work that you do and what you bring to your work.
All the different places I grew up in, where I'm from, there's no way that doesn't impact the way I see the world and how I approach my work at Microsoft. So I'm originally from Ethiopia. That's where I was born. But I grew up across Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda. And in each of those countries, I went to international schools, so that playing translator role just comes naturally to me given my background. And so now I'm a data scientist by training, but I work in a department full of lawyers, and it comes kind of naturally to me to try to help develop AI policies, but also translate that to how AI engineers may interpret that. But then growing up across all of these different cultures and myself not being from here, I'm very attuned to when perspectives are missing, when cultural angles are missing. So that's why this work that I get to do at Microsoft is meaningful personally to me, to try and make sure that different voices are represented and how we think about how AI systems should be developed.
When you think about, we hear also the word fairness a lot. What does that actually mean, really, in the world of AI? And then how do you operationalize that?
So there's three different types of fairness issues or fairness-related harms that we talk about here at Microsoft. The first is allocation harms. So does an AI system that's used to make consequential decisions, like housing decisions, financial services decisions, that kind of thing, have disparate allocation across different groups of people, however you define them? So that's the first. The second is what we call quality of service harms. Does a system like if you're transcribing speech to text, or you're trying to talk to Copilot or ChatGPT and it's speaking back to you, does that quality of service perform differently across different groups of people? And then lastly, there's a bigger bucket called what we call representational harms. Does the images generated by AI, or in old school like search results of images or videos, when you type stuff in, overrepresent certain groups of people, underrepresent certain groups of people, or in some cases erase certain groups of people entirely, stereotype people in harmful ways, or produce demeaning outputs related to certain groups of people. So that's what, as a broad bucket, we call representational harms. So when you kind of categorize these things, it actually helps you think about who's being harmed, in what ways, and how we can potentially start to measure and mitigate these things.
Yeah. And so one thing I learned in my work on digital inclusion is that there are many reasons why a community or region may not be online or may face digital barriers. And so the obvious ones are hardware. People actually can't physically log on online. There isn't services, there isn't a satellite, there isn't a computer. But then part two, which is more nuanced, sometimes the material or the answers to problems don't actually fit the context, right? So the reason to go online isn't as useful for some groups as others. So in the context of AI, how do you know you're building AI systems that can solve problems of people in local and more regional contexts?
I think the first one, of course, is is it accessible to them in their language is probably the first thing. Like, can they interact with it in a way that feels comfortable, feels natural to them? That's the biggest, I think, first barrier. Even if it works well in their language, understands their cultural context to a certain extent, does it understand their lived experience to a certain extent? So I remember there was one example out of Microsoft Research Nairobi, where they were talking about how a chatbot had made a recommendation to a person who was living in Kibera, which is a slum area in Nairobi, to leave their home and get medical attention for something in the middle of the night. So it's like, what's worse, to leave your home in a very dangerous neighborhood in the middle of the night to get medical attention, or to wait until the next morning to get medical attention? So that kind of context awareness is critical to make informed decisions, to write policies even, right, for how AI systems should perform, but then also how to design those systems to work for those contexts as well.
That's a really profound example, and it really drives home what actually happened in somebody's lived experience. And then the name of the program literally matches your life, Global Perspectives AI Fellowship. So can you tell me a little bit more about this fellowship and an example from it in terms of some of the feedback that you've maybe provided that has changed or shaped how Microsoft approaches AI?
Yeah, so the Global Perspectives Fellowship program, the genesis of it was from this desire to make sure that we don't have blind spots when we're developing AI policies for Microsoft, when we're engaging with academic institutions, civil society groups, policymakers from around the world, that we don't forget about different parts of the world that may not immediately be present in the venues that we're in. So this fellowship convenes AI experts, policymakers, AI engineers, and now we're also tapping into the creative community, which I'm really excited about, so that we can listen and learn from them, help us understand what are the beneficial uses of AI that are manifesting in your part of the world, but also what are the misuses that you're seeing that we need to be aware of. Our technology touches every corner of the world, so we need to be aware of how these misuses are playing out.
And when you look at your fellowship in particular, is there an example that you've given feedback on and that has reshaped or changed the way Microsoft has approached AI?
So in my role in the Office of Responsible AI here at Microsoft, our primary function is to write AI policies for Microsoft. So the sort of foundational playbook for developing AI in a responsible way that we have at Microsoft is called the Responsible AI Standard. It is structured by our AI principles. It has goals and requirements that AI engineers need to follow. And so they gave feedback on that Responsible AI Standard, and now we are in the process of updating that standard, and their feedback is going to be incorporated into that. And that is what will influence how AI systems and models are built across Microsoft.
And how do you test models in a culturally sensitive way? What does that mean? And who decides?
Yeah, great question. So this is the part where I feel like scale is a massive challenge. Right now for English, we're able to develop testing pipelines for AI systems that cut across different topical areas, if you will, using generative AI systems, right? So like instructions are developed by humans and tested by humans, but then the actual testing pipeline is automated through Gen AI. That's great for English. But if you're trying to test your system for Arabic, or Dutch or some other language, you need humans in the loop until those generative AI systems can perform better in those languages. A good example of this is M365 Copilot runs a service that actually pulls in human evaluators from different parts of the world, depending on what the language is that they're trying to test for. And they follow a particular rubric and they evaluate the system's performance in those languages with people who speak that language natively.
When it comes to global governance in artificial intelligence, something we hear a lot about, it's really important. But what does global governance actually mean and look like when, in reality, the GDP of several countries are less than a single investment into one AI project?
The amount of money that's being poured into AI infrastructure, GPUs, all of it is astounding. But at the same time, it's critical that these voices from different parts of the world are part of the global governance ecosystem. One thing that stands out to me that I think could be powerful and something that these ecosystems need to recognize more frequently is the power of like regional coalitions. So a good example of this is UNESCO has just started a coalition for low resource languages in partnership with Iceland. Iceland is a small nation. The number of speakers that speak Icelandic fluently are limited and reducing in size. So it's very important for their government that representation of Icelandic in AI systems grows and becomes more proficient. So they've done a lot of work to collect data and to give that data to OpenAI and other companies so that they can improve their AI models for Icelandic. And those lessons now, the goal is for UNESCO to pull together other countries that are also small, have not as great representation of their language in Common Crawl data that's available on the web, and see if we can develop something that is that's kind of based on the Iceland approach.
Right. And everywhere that there's an unmet need, that's also a market opportunity. And it's really interesting to make the point that maybe AI, it doesn't always have to be this massive approach to models. There could be specific use cases and specific purposes that bring together different regions and form a different incentive behind AI. And what gets you really excited about some of the problems AI can solve or some of the regions or communities that AI can support that just wasn't possible in a pre-AI era?
Take the country I'm from as an example, which is Ethiopia. Ethiopia has, I think, around 30 million people. There are 80 languages spoken in that one country. And that's 1 out of 54 countries that are on the continent of Africa. So think about that scale. It's massive. So if AI can break down barriers within a country even and allow people within a country, if a government is able to communicate fluently to that 130 million people in those 80 different languages. Imagine the impact that could make, that alone, which seems like a simple thing, but it is incredible. I remember being on a conference call with some customers in Korea. The whole meeting was being conducted in Korean, right? But you can turn on transcription in Microsoft Teams so that you can see like the live transcription in English. It wasn't perfect, but I could still follow along about what's going on in the meeting and understand without having a translator in my ear, if that makes sense. So like breaking down those language barriers in and of itself, I think could be profound in a lot of ways. So it's a simple thing, but it could unlock so many things.
Yeah, I mean, language is such a critical story of access. And we forget that language in and of itself is a technology. And so now you have, and technologies build on each other, right? And so now that if you have a technology that can help you move through the technology of language, that is a huge unlock in and of itself.
Oh my gosh, yes. And language is not static. It changes, it evolves. Like the next generation has a different way of speaking and engaging with one another. So AI will have to keep up with how language is evolving. So what we trained in 2025 needs to be like essentially updated by the time we're like in 2040 when generation beta comes to fruition and they have their own way of communicating.
Right. And then the final question I wanted to ask you was about transparency. So what does that look like in AI? So where are we moving to? Why is transparency so vital when it comes to building AI systems that actually work effectively across diverse groups?
There's so many angles to transparency, right? I think they're like the very first thing that comes to mind for me is AI systems are becoming so human-like, especially the voice-enabled ones where you can talk to them. So that disclosure that this system that you're speaking to is AI is like one form of transparency that's important. There's so many other angles of transparency that are critical for developers of AI systems that take a model that's already been built and they're trying to build their own application. Do they understand the intended use of that model, its limitations? Does it work well in Arabic? Should I use it for an Arabic application or not? So that systematized or like standardized way of communicating the limits of a model so that it can be used effectively across applications is just so important. And I think we're making good progress in that space, but there's still a long way to go to make it a standard across the world. What information needs to be a part of transparency documentation so people can leverage these systems in a responsible way.
And I guess the one thing that we sometimes maybe forget with artificial intelligence is we're not done, right? So we're going to continue to refine and to update how we build this technology, how we safeguard this technology. It's going to be this ongoing kind of lived experience, live document as we go.
I think the uses of AI that, are touted right now is like, can we be marginally more productive? Or can we get something marginally faster than we have today? And it's like, yes, that's great, but I would love to come up with something more impactful to the human race, I guess. And I'm just trying to tap into different parts of the world to imagine alternative futures with AI. So I'm really excited what they're going to come up with.
And you're definitely speaking my language as a futurist, because I do believe that it's really hard to move towards futures that you haven't declared. And that's where everybody can also step into the table, right? I mean, I think, what are the dreams that you want to see with this technology? What do you want it to mean for you?
I think I'll start with, as somebody who works in the responsible AI space, it's natural for me to think about the risks first. So I remember over a decade ago in Toronto, when I was fresh out of school and trying to find entry-level work, how hard it was even then. But I can only imagine how difficult it is going to be for the students that are coming out of school now in the dawn of AI, what that's going to look like for them to enter the workforce when that bar keeps getting higher and higher. So that's the worry that I have, but I do hope that, I'm a mom now. I have a little one who's going to be entering school not too far into the future. And I hope that schools are becoming more open to the idea of incorporating AI in some way into the curriculum so that students can learn how to work with it in a more fluent way. I don't think we should underestimate students and their ability to learn how to work with new technology, especially if it's introduced fairly early on and with the right guardrails in place. So that's my hope, is that, that one-on-one teaching and sort of coaching use cases with AI could help scale the impact of teachers. That excites me.
And I think what's going to be really reassuring for people is to hear you say you're also concerned about the risks, right? To know that there are people on the inside that are thinking about the same problems that you are as well. I think we all want to see this technology win for everyone, and we all want to make sure that we build it in the right way. And to know that there are people that are optimizing for both is really reassuring. So it has been such a pleasure, and I look forward to keeping up with what the fellowship does next.
Awesome. Thank you, Sinead. It's been so great talking to you.